Good day, colleagues. Let's get started. Let me start by welcoming all of you to this Ingxoxo. We once again look forward to hearing from Danai and Cheryl, and also having conversations with colleagues who continue to challenge themselves to explore various ways of making learning more meaningful for our students. Colleagues, I think it is important that I mention that we continuously, or I get feedback from participants, I get feedback from those who attend these sessions, and some of the feedback has suggestions on how we can improve our interactions. And I want to encourage all of you to continue giving us feedbacks on various strategies that can stimulate more conversations, and most importantly, on how we can expand our reach. Thank you very much, colleagues, for your invaluable inputs. We really, really appreciate them. I always remind all of us that these sessions are about supporting one another. They are about sharing what works. They are about creating safe spaces for us to learn from each other, to learn from our students, and to learn in terms of how to deal with challenges. Last week, Jenny mentioned the importance of changing midstream. When you try out something and you realize that it doesn't work, it's important to change and try something out. So it is important for us to feel comfortable to ask whatever questions we want to ask, but also to share and prod so that we can improve or enhance our learning and teaching strategies. And once again, colleagues, we are putting emphasis on maximizing student engagement, because we are doing all of this for the benefit of our students. So without wasting any time, I am going to hand over to the presenters. And I think when I communicated with them, I indicated that the first person who will start is Danai. So I'm going to hand over to you, Dee.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Toni. And thank you for inviting me to share my experience with online learning. It's been quite an interesting journey so far, kind of being thrown in the deep end of having to change how you do everything. But it's been nice to learn new ways of approaching teaching and learning, and also kind of challenging myself, as Dr. Toni already mentioned. So I'm just going to give you some background about what I'm doing this semester, and then talk about the different platforms that I have been using with my students. So I'm teaching second years this semester, and I am supervising postgraduate students. I have 2 honors students and 1 master students. My second year class is about 25 students, so it's relatively small. And I've had at least the first part of the semester before we went on lockdown to actually interact with my students face to face. So that kind of helped for me to kind of get to know my students, who they are, how they operate, what they respond to and what they don't respond to. And so that time was really good, because in getting to know who I was teaching, it helped me to be able to choose the platforms that I thought would be most effective for us. For my personal teaching style, I really love interaction, and because I've had the opportunity to teach relatively small classes up until now, it's easy to, you know, develop one-on-one relationships with my students. And so, yeah, so it was nice to have that first part to get to know my students. And then that enabled me to choose the different platforms that I was going to use for the online learning. So I've been, with my undergrads, I've been using, of course, email, which is the general platform that I use to communicate things to the class as a whole. I've also been using Moodle, and I've been using WhatsApp. With the Moodle, what I have been doing is I have been uploading, because it's 0 rated, I chose to use Moodle just because it would make it easier for them to be able to access the information that I needed them to access. So I set up a schedule once my pathway 1 and pathway 2 students had been determined, set up a schedule and we decided how I was going to present the different units. So each Monday I upload the presentation onto Moodle, and usually my presentations are very text light because, like I said, when I'm doing face-to-face lectures, I like to have the interaction. So I usually have just keywords or images or videos or things that will stimulate a discussion. So because we've moved to online space and I don't have that opportunity to interact with them face-to-face, I had to kind of change how I put together my slides. So included a little bit more text, but tried to keep as many images and videos as possible. Initially I wanted to have voice recordings over the slides, but it made the files really big, and Moodle has a file size limit, so I had to kind of do a switch there. And so, yeah, I upload everything on Moodle. And then I set up a group on WhatsApp. I have a spare SIM card, so I created a WhatsApp group there. And in that WhatsApp group, I am the only one that's allowed to post anything. So it's not just an open group for everyone to talk, because I know that the class already has a WhatsApp group where they discuss different things. So I set up the group. I'm the only one that posts messages on the group, and essentially I use that as an additional platform from the email to be able to get messages across to them, and so that I know they'll all be on their phones on WhatsApp, and so sending a message on the WhatsApp group means that they'll get the message a lot quicker, and yeah, the response time will be faster. And so with each of my units, I would have the presentation, and at the end of each unit there's an activity, and this I added that as a way for them to interact with the material in different ways. So even though they are having to go through the material that I send them, I also want them to still be able to in some way interact with the material and in some way interact with me about the material. And so each unit has an activity at the end, and they have the whole day. So if I upload something on a Monday, by the end of the day on Monday, then they would send me responses to that activity. So the activities take different forms. So either answering questions, watching a video, and giving feedback on that video, etc., etc. And because I have them on WhatsApp, I allow them to then communicate those responses with me via WhatsApp. So they can either send me a voice note and tell me what they think about the unit and whatever, or text me on WhatsApp or send me an email. And so, knowing that they are all comfortable with communicating in different ways, I just wanted to make sure that they had a number of options that would be the most comfortable for them. So some felt more comfortable just sending their activity responses on via email. A few of them actually liked sending voice notes, which was nice for me because in some way it felt like I was interacting with them face to face. And then others would just send me text messages. Some would write their stuff down, take a picture, and then WhatsApp that to me. And then with my postgraduate students, I have been using Teams, and I like Teams because it's a quick way to get in touch with them. It's one platform I can use to just have chats with them, to do video calls or audio calls, and also a way to be able to share documents with them. So instead of having to send stuff back and forth via email and then arranging a Skype call and then, having all of these different things, Teams actually makes it easier for us to do everything on one platform. And so that's been great. And so what I did with my research students is I created a group on Teams, and in that group I can share stuff with them because generally with my research students, they're all doing topics that are part of my field. And so when I have something that I think that they might be interested in, it allows me to, I can just upload it on Teams and send them a message and let them know that I've uploaded something. And because I have Teams on my phone, if they send me a message on Teams, then they can get in touch with me easily. So that's what I did with my postgrad students. Just in terms of some of the considerations I made as I was moving on to the online space was, like I said, just knowing who I'm working with and what they respond to best. And one of the other things was just having a class representative. And that even before, especially before we went on lockdown, it was good to have a class rep because I could I had his cell phone number, and I would just send him a message and let him know, please tell the group, please put a message on your WhatsApp group, tell the class I've sent an email, or I've done this, or I've done that, and the message was getting to them quicker. And I have been making use a lot of the class rep, even now that we have moved on to an online platform, so that he can also pass on messages to the group in the bigger group, which has both Pathway 1 and Pathway 2 students, and also just kind of streamlining the flow of information as well. I just want to make sure I haven't forgotten anything. And then, yeah, so things to think about we are moving back. We are gradually moving back onto campus, and there's still decisions to be made about whether we're going to have face-to-face teaching again, or if teaching is going to continue online, etc. So for my planning for second semester, I'm really just kind of planning to actually continue with the online platform and teaching online. But now I have new things to think about because I have a lot more modules that I'm teaching and different groups. So next semester I'm teaching first years, and the class is much bigger. I think I have about 120 students in that class. And I'm teaching 2 postgraduate classes, honors class and a master's class. And of course, continuing with my research students. So it's been, the task for me now has been thinking about what platforms are going to work with those different groups. I have bigger groups, so is it going to be feasible to continue to have a WhatsApp group, or just kind of thinking about how I am going to take what I've been doing and either adjust it to the new group, or we'll continue with that. It's worked with the people that I'm working with right now, the students that I'm working with right now, but it may not necessarily work with the students that I'm going to have next semester. Fortunately, with the first year students, 2 of my colleagues have been doing online teaching with the first year, so it'll be nice for me to be able to kind of sit with them and just see how things have worked, what's worked with them, and what's been successful for them. But it's going to be interesting to see how I'll go about it with my postgraduate students, because for all of them, I won't have an opportunity to actually interact with them face to face and get to know them, and kind of get a gauge of what works for them and what doesn't. So that's going to be an interesting experience. But so far, I guess, as a whole, the experience has been very challenging. Just moving on to the online platform, for me, it has felt like the workload has increased. You're constantly thinking about, what you are providing your students with, and also thinking about how they will receive that information, because it's so much easier when you're standing in front of the classroom. I can easily see if one of my students, or if a few students are not, I get really absorbing the material, if there's something that they don't understand. But if I can't see them, I'm not really sure. So you're constantly thinking about how you put the material out there in a way that everyone will be able to absorb it and will be able to understand it. So that's one big challenge that I've had. And also just, it's a lot more work. It's a lot more, how can I put it? It's it's just a lot more work, but it's been an interesting challenge, and I'm looking forward to the coming semester and having an opportunity to kind of adjust what I've been doing to fit the new group of students that I will be teaching. That's it from my side.
Thank you so much, Danai. We'll have a conversation later after Cheryl's inputs. Let me hand over to you, Cheryl.
Oh, hi there. Sorry, I've got it. There we go. I've read a couple of slides, if I can share my screen, and I'm going to basically just talk around those slides, if that's okay.
That's okay.
You just give me a second. Okay, can everybody see my slides?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Okie dokie. Thank you very much for the invite and the opportunity to share some of my experiences. And it was really interesting to hear our previous speaker. She's a lot of the stuff that she has spoken about is very close to my heart, and stuff that I've obviously experienced. I'm not sure how many know that I have been lecturing for in excess of 31, 32 years. I can't say that I've ever lost my passion. I have lost passion for marking, but I certainly haven't lost passion for teaching my students. Okay, so just a little bit of a background to illustrate the subjects that I'm involved with. Obviously, it's our IT software development diploma, although with my Infos 2, that involves support services students as well as our software development students. And dear, I envy you having those small classes. That is a distant memory from my Technicon days when I first started lecturing. And having a class that is smaller certainly changes the way that you teach and the way that you interact with your students. And I'm very much I see myself as a teacher more than a lecturer, because unfortunately, I had some bad lecturers when I was a student, and that is my guide, that I don't want to be like them. I don't want to be somebody who just walks in, talks, and walks out. I want to engage, I want to interact, and I want to build relationships. And at the end of the day, I'm wanting to make a difference. So that is really my motto in life, if I can put it that way. So just to give you an indication, so I presented this about 2 weeks ago at our faculty board. So initially, when I started just sort of getting my sums together, if you can see, initially I had about 273 that had chosen Pathway 1. That has definitely changed, especially in the last 2 weeks. I have had communication from students saying they're really struggling with Pathway 1, their devices, they haven't got laptops, and that's really obviously holding them back. So that number has definitely reduced. However, I still have a fair response from the students who have chosen Pathway 1. And the reason why they've gone that way, I think, will be clearer when I highlight some of my methods or my approaches, if I can put it that way. And then I have Infos 3, and that is a decent sized class. That was only 159. Only had a small number that have changed from Pathway 1 to Pathway 2, because typically they are trying to graduate at the end of this year. So majority of them are really trying to keep to Pathway 1 for a lot of their subjects. So that has definitely got a high rate for those that have chosen Pathway 1. Okay, challenges. I didn't want to put anything on here other than just this word challenges. And as Dee mentioned, changing our approach and how we are as a lecturer or as a teacher, and how we just naturally would interact with our students has become not quite a thing of the past, but it's been difficult to maintain that kind of teaching method and interaction as we've gone on to an online platform. So that is probably one of the things that I have struggled with the most, is feeling that I'm losing that connectivity with my students and the more personal interaction. Okay, so that's my challenges. However, I think we've all experienced the challenges that the students have faced, and Varsity has really come to the fore in trying to assist the students with providing them data and trying to provide them with devices. Obviously, with our courses being IT, a PC is critical for them to be able to do a lot of their modules. And even the PCs that are provided, unfortunately, are not sufficient enough from a processing capacity to load certain software that they would need. So it really is a very difficult situation. So students are being given data, but however, they still struggle with internet connectivity. And it was just a day or two ago that we were sent on some of us as lecturers, the lens that a student is going to try and ensure that they can actually connect. So they had walked up a hill and they're sitting on the top of a hill with just their PC, and it was one of those freezing cold days. And they're really going to many lens to try and connect, just to get internet connectivity. Home situations, lack of electricity, you know, the normal things. But the biggest thing I think that they struggle with, and certainly from the communication that I've had with them, is on a personal level. Just that the feeling of isolation, and especially feeling as if they've just been sort of left alone, especially if there's been no contact from their lecturers. And I do feel that they want contact, as in almost that personal kind of contact, not just the emails. So that was my feeling that I got, I've got from the students. So right from the beginning of lockdown, even before we actually started even looking at going back and trying to start doing any kind of teaching, I really started getting worried for my students, and I didn't like the fact that I wasn't in contact with them. And I did know that a lot of them don't have PCs, they have phones, but not all of them have email loaded on their phone. So for me, email as being my only way of communicating with them wasn't sufficient. So I had some students that I had their cell phone numbers for, and they had my cell phone number. So I really then started quite in depth is not quite the right word, but I started emailing and I started sending messages to the students that I did have on WhatsApp. And I was then trying to get hold of the student's cell phone number so that I could add them to a WhatsApp group. So you saw my numbers on the previous slide. So I have large numbers. And I, at this stage, did not know that there was an easier way to get hold of the students and their cell phone numbers, that was easily accessible via the ITS system. However, it's worked. I've got one WhatsApp group for my third years, and because of WhatsApp limitations in size for number of participants, I've got 2 WhatsApp groups for my second years. And this, I cannot emphasize enough how much WhatsApp has assisted me, assisted students, and they really do feel the, does it say, can I say feel the love? It sounds really a little cliched, but I can pick up when somebody's a little bit demotivated, or they might comment, and then I can go offline and start chatting with them one-to-one. And that one-to-one connectivity or connection makes a huge difference, for me, and certainly for the students as well. So as I said right at the beginning, I started communicating with the students slowly but surely, and I started re-looking at my content, even the content that I'd sort of done just before lockdown. And my approach was, I had large slides, but I very seldom talk off slides. They were really for revision purposes and for students to use, and I added notes to the bottom of the slide. So re-looking at that, I obviously adapted, and if I can say, I chunked my slides. I broke them up into smaller pieces, tried not to go more than about 10 to 12 slides, and I put in some extra notes. And then I also started trying to figure out the best way that I could verbally get information to them, because with information systems, it's very much a logical and an applied subject. It's not, there's some theory, but I take the theory and I like to apply it. So it's quite practical. So there's a lot of exercise activities that I would normally do in class that I use to develop certain skills that are obviously key in the software development world. So WhatsApp I've used not just from just normal personal communication. I have found that a lot of students, especially in the beginning, before they were given any data from varsity, had WhatsApp packages, data packages. So they didn't have data to get onto the Learn site, they didn't have access to emails, however they had data to use their WhatsApp. So I started then uploading the work via WhatsApp as well as on the Learn site. So once the Learn sites became 0 rated, obviously that became key. However, a lot of them still actually make use of WhatsApp as a means to download. The learning platform obviously is, well, maybe not so obviously, but we've been using Moodle for a number of years. And there I put my PowerPoint slides. I have simply used PowerPoint to record sort of a presentation. So I do audio, but I also use my little mouse pointer and a pen. Trying to write with a mouse on a PowerPoint slide is not the easiest and not the neatest, but it works. It allows me to chalk and talk and really explain the logical background why I've come up with certain solutions, and I've restructured my slides so that I can take them step by step through logical processes. And Dee mentioned earlier about the increasing workload. Oh, Dee, you hit that nail on the head. It really, I think, has grown exponentially from a lecturer's perspective anyway. Email, I always use email to communicate with them. So everything I do, whether it's exercises, I've used responders to create activities at the end of different topics. They all go onto the Learn site. But what I really would like to highlight was once I sort of started realizing that students had so many obstacles and so many challenges, I didn't want them to not have access to the material and not be able to submit the work just because they didn't have the device and they couldn't get onto Moodle. So yes, I know it's created work for myself, but what I've done is I've allowed them to, first choice is obviously do the activities, the responders activities on Moodle. Alternatively, I have downloaded those activities, converted them into Word documents or PDF, and I've circulated those via WhatsApp or email, and I've allowed them then to either type up, or they can even write it out, do their drawings or the ERDs, whatever the logical tool is that they need to use to express their answers in. And if necessary, take photos of it and WhatsApp it to me, email it to me, whatever the case may be. So I think that flexibility that I've allowed, so that I can try and reach as many students as possible, or allow them ways to answer and do the work, I think that has been one of the biggest reasons why I've got so many students that have kept going with Pathway 1. I haven't gone the Teams route. I've made use of Zoom. What I do try and do, so I've got, I try and have at least one lecture a week with my second years and my third years, but I set up 2 different meeting times, a morning one and a late afternoon one, just to try and open it up to more students. People attending those Zoom lectures, the numbers are not great, but I think it's a great way to at least feel that you are connecting. And whatever I present during that lecture, later on I will use those slides and diagram, and I will actually basically record whatever I have presented during that Zoom lecture, so that no student is sidelined with the actual content of the work. I think that's pretty much most of that. And then just to end off with, what do we get out of it? And what have the students got out of it? Something that I have seen was such a sense of Ubuntu occurring just even on WhatsApp amongst the students. So my third years in particular created their own WhatsApp group to assist each other technically with programming questions, technical stuff, PC related stuff. And it was just so heartwarming to see how students were assisting each other. I've had students request private Zoom meetings, and a couple of them have got together and they've been working together and assisting each other. And the growth that I've seen for them, even throughout these difficult times, and certainly my growth, it really, I think I always thought we were too old to learn new tricks, but that's not so. This has really certainly taught me lots of new things just about myself and about people. And communication, I cannot emphasize communication, and I think students really want more than just email and more than just slides loaded up on a Moodle site. And I think that is the challenge that we as lecturers have to face and really take into consideration, is they need to still feel that they haven't been left behind, and that we are still interested in them, and they need the communication and slightly more personal. And I think WhatsApp was a great way to do that. And even just doing the voice notes, sending them the odd little meme on the group shows that you're human. We make mistakes, we don't always agree, but we have a platform to iron out any of those communication issues. And that was it. So that was it. Thank you very much for the time.
Thank you, Cheryl, and thanks, Dee, as well. And your last slide summarizes it very beautifully. And colleagues, before I hog the space, I will open up. I want to see the participants so that I can be able to see whose hands are up. Whilst I'm waiting for the hands to go up, I just want to pick up on something, a thread that goes through, that's a thread of revising or repackaging the slides. Both of you have done that. You have realized that what you would normally use in a face-to-face arrangement will not necessarily work. And with you, Dee, you said your slides had a few words and you realized that you needed to add more text so that there is more understanding. Can you elaborate on the aspects that you took into consideration in repackaging your slides besides adding more text?
So I think like Cheryl mentioned, I had to add just little notes to explain what was on the slide, which is what I would have normally done if I was standing in front of the group. So it was thinking about how can I best explain what they are seeing so that they understand it without me standing in front of them explaining to them to help them understand. So apart from adding more text, I needed to make sure that what I was including made sense and was as simple as possible to understand, because you need to make sure that the person that you observe to be, I don't want to say the weakest student, but the person that you can see would struggle the most, if that person gets it, then everybody else will be able to get it. So it was kind of changing the language in a way that everybody understands exactly what I am trying to say without me being there to tell them. And so what I did in the schedule is I would upload, the schedule would show the date that the unit would be uploaded. And then they would have the whole day to submit the activity for that unit. And then by the next day, they had an opportunity to actually contact me and ask me questions. So if they had any questions on the material, and so then I would collate all of their questions and then give them feedback as a group. Sometimes I would just put together a document and put it on the WhatsApp group. But sometimes there were instances where I would get the same question over and over. So I would actually just send them a voice note and say, okay, so you've all asked me this. This is what I was trying to say on this point or on this issue in this unit. And so then it would be, then I would get the response, oh, thanks, ma'am. Okay, we get it. Or, okay, we understand now. And so, yeah, trying to have as much interaction as possible without having the normal interaction that you have. I don't know if that makes sense, but yeah, it was really, really about thinking about, okay, so who do I know in my group that might struggle? And so as long as I know what I'm saying will be able to reach that person, then I know everybody else in the rest of the class is covered. I don't know if that answers your question.
It does. It was not meant to be a question. It was meant to be a point of clarity, because this is a conversation. We want to know more. We want to change our ways. We want to improve. And I'm still waiting for other people to join in the conversation. And Cheryl, your passion just comes through. When you started talking, you mentioned the devices, the computers not having everything that your students needed. I'm interested in knowing, how do you get around that? So your students not having the devices that are adequate for the kind of work that you want to do with them. Can you please elaborate on that?
Yes, I can. So obviously majority of the students have, I won't even say smartphones. So a lot of them can have at least type in stuff, trying to get hold of the software that we would normally encourage them to use to do various drawings, which is used in illustrating development logic. I've actually allowed them to draw by hand. So obviously, as I said, I'm very much a chalk and talk kind of person. There's a need for technology, but there's still the need for a good old-fashioned kind of teaching, if I can put it that way. So I've allowed them as much flexibility as possible. So they've contacted me, said, I've really tried uploading, but I'm battling with the internet, or I can't download the software. And it's like, draw it by hand, as long as it's neat. Take a photograph, WhatsApp it to me. So on my side, admin-wise, I sort of make sure that I save it, and I will make a plan. I don't want them not to submit just because they don't have their PC, or their PC doesn't have the software on. My subject has the ability that I can allow them to do that. People who are teaching programming languages have a greater challenge because they actually need the PC. They are looking at ways that they'll give them the code. They must look at the logic, but it's not the same of them actually physically having the software to be able to program. And that's where they need devices with bigger capacity and stronger processing. So that's especially the programming students subjects, that's a big challenge. If I can go back to what Dee said, and Dixie also made a comment in the chats that she spoke about the students also feeling that their workload has increased. And Dixie, I can attest to that, because it was certainly a comment that was made to me that they feel that I was overloading them. And it was a case of, well, that wasn't my aim, but I have put due dates on, but more as a time management approach to say, okay, I'm looking for you to submit it during this time, but I haven't closed it. So I'm not allowing, it's not that I'm stopping students handing in late. I was just trying to help them in being able to manage their time and saying, listen, if you were at varsity, you would be spending X amount of time. Okay, factors change, but try and find the time that you work. Unfortunately, there seems to be a large number of students that the time that they can work is obviously when the house is quieter, because there's a large number of people living in a very small space. So they're working very late at night. I work late at night, so I often see the messages, the WhatsApp messages coming through 11 o'clock, 11:30. If I'm awake, I answer, because that's just how I am. If I'm asleep, I answer the next morning. But there are a lot of them that are working late at night. And I think, sorry, to get back to your question, I've tried to accommodate good old-fashioned writing on paper, using their phones, as best as possible.
Thank you, Cheryl. Dana, I see that you have something to say. Over to you.
Thank you. Sorry, I just wanted to actually add to what Cheryl said about, not all the students having a suitable device to use. And I found that with my students as well, even though I know most of them have a smartphone, but not all of them have laptops. And I've had instances with my Pathway 1 students where some of them actually applied for the laptop through the university and didn't get it, and have been finding creative ways to actually submit what they need to submit. And that's made me have to be quite flexible in how I receive the work that I need them to submit. So if it's, like Cheryl said, allowing them to write it down on a piece of paper and take a picture and send it through, some of my students will actually type up stuff on their cell phone and then email it. And so it doesn't look very nice because it's a whole lot of text because it's being done on a cell phone. But, they are, for the most part, really working hard to try and find ways to get the work done. And for me, it's been, I've just had to try and make sure I am as flexible as possible in, if they send it to me the next morning, and allowing them to submit the next morning because they needed a little bit extra time because they're typing it out on a cell phone or writing it down on paper and then having to take a picture. Flexibility has been something that I've really needed to have because they all are in different situations. And like Cheryl mentioned, not everyone's home situation is ideal, and so they try and work when they can work. So just thinking about time, thinking about my flexibility in allowing them to they want to do the work, allowing them to be able to submit it late if they need to, and to submit it in different ways. Yeah, that's what I wanted to add.
Okay. Colleagues, I'm also checking the chats. There's one question that says, when a student has to complete an assignment in the span of one day, how do you go about if they could not do it because of not feeling well or not having connectivity that day, Danai, which is something real? Do you want to respond to that, Dee?
Yeah, I can respond to that. So I have actually had situations where I've had a couple of students that were sick, and some that have had connectivity issues. And my one student actually, his smartphone, which was his only way to access and do work, broke. And so I think being in communication with them on WhatsApp has really helped that, because the one thing that I said right from the get-go is, okay, you have me on WhatsApp, so if you have a problem, communicate it. I won't know unless you tell me. And so that's been a very important part of the process. And Cheryl mentioned this in her presentation, that communication has been so key. So yeah, they've been WhatsApping me and letting me know, okay, this is the problem I have, and then we figure it out together. As much as I've had a schedule, and as much as I've had due dates for different things, like I said, I've had to be flexible. Obviously, you want to work within reason. You don't want to just say, okay, everything's okay, you can do whatever you want. But understanding that, you know, not everyone is in an ideal situation. People are going to get sick. People are going to be anxious. People are going to have connectivity issues. Just as long as they are communicating with me and letting me know what their situation is, then I've taken the standpoint of just, okay, we talk about it and we figure out the best solution for whatever the problem is. So yeah, I hope that answers the question.
Okay. I also hope that I'm not missing anything else, but I must say I am very much encouraged by your inputs, you, Cheryl, and Danai. The fact that you are prepared and you go out of your way to accommodate the different learning approaches or learning styles of students, and your understanding that what works with one group might not necessarily work with the other group, and the agility or flexibility of knowing that we need to make adjustments, and Cheryl's appreciations that some students must go on the top of the mountain to get connectivity, and you being responsive in terms of whether the WhatsApp message comes in the morning or late at night. But it doesn't mean that everyone must sacrifice their sleep for that. But what works for you, you do it to the benefit of the students. And I think now is the time for me to hand over to you, Jenny. Are you ready?
Yes, thank you, Noluthando. Wow, there's been a lot in today's presentation. So thank you very much to you, Danai, and to Cheryl. Nice lot of overlap and supporting practice between the two of you, and also some individual things that came through. In all of these discussions, there are themes that are common, and then there's always something that is slightly different, a different emphasis, a different point being made. So at each point, we are adding and enriching to the insights that we're getting. So thank you both very much indeed. It was quite difficult to actually just pull out things that struck me hardest today. But I think for me, there were two things that I want to note before I look at other themes, and they're all equally important, really. But the first one was the sense of Ubuntu emerging most particularly between the students, looking out for each other, helping each other, all of those things I think are of crucial importance. And that was linked to the points that both Cheryl and I made in different ways about students really needing connectivity and communication, sense of isolation. This has come through before, but today it had a special touch that really our students are in need of the personal interaction that is more difficult to achieve in online space, if you like. So that was the first thing. I'll come back to getting to know students a bit later, but that was the first thing. The other thing that I really do think we need to acknowledge and appreciate is the amount of work that staff are putting into this online transition, and the amount of work that students are experiencing. From the student point of view, we probably have to look together as staff within our departments at the kinds of demands we're making on our students. It seems to be a common cry that there is simply too much for them to achieve in the space of any one day or week. But the amount of work that the staff are doing needs to be noted very, very especially here. And increasingly as we move forward, you're not going to have the experience of a few weeks of contact with your new classes, many of you, especially those who carry on teaching online. So those were things I wanted just to note. And then there are lots of others, and they're all important. The importance of what you called deep end experiences, Dani, getting thrown in the deep end, and instead of drowning, swimming fast enough and hard enough to make a difference. And making a difference was another theme that emerged today. But using deep end experience to effect change in the way in which you think, and change in the way in which you teach. So I think that was very important. And people in the chat also said, yes, it's harder work, but we're enjoying the challenge. I think particularly for people who thrive on fluidity and change and challenge, this is a good experience. For others who need more structure, it has been good, but probably a bit more challenging. So that was the one thing. Then the other thing I wanted to note was the importance of knowing your students. Dani, you mentioned this, and certainly Cheryl, it came through in both of your presentations, the importance of having a sense of who your students are one-on-one. And as I said earlier, you're not going to have the privilege of knowing your students personally necessarily next semester. So we have to think together of new ways of how best to engage with our students, to sustain the engagement, and to make sure that we can get a sense of who they are. Maybe little life histories, little things about what they expect, little surveys at the beginning of a module. I don't know what the methods would be, but there must be multiple ways, I'm sure, of ensuring that you get to know your students. I also liked the notion of going from text light to slightly more text dense PowerPoints, but not so that you overwhelm the students with words, to keep the videos, to keep the visual material intact as well. So I think that was important, and Noluthando, you picked that up as well. And then the intersection between platforms, which Noluthando, you also mentioned. I think that's important. We're looking now for multiple optimal flexibility of methodology so that all our students have a chance to access the materials that we're looking for. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing is the importance of matching the platform to the group. The use of teams with postgraduate students where the groups are small, you can chat, you can talk, you can look at each other, you can upload material. That's one way. Teams doesn't necessarily work as well in big groups. So what are the alternatives? And that intentional matching, I think, is going to be a very important factor of our interventions going forward. I think that's about all I want to say for now. So just to end by saying thank you so much, and thank you for all the hard work that's happening across all our departments and faculties. Thank you.
Thanks, Jenny. A quick word from you, Champ.
All right, good afternoon, colleagues. Next week, we will again concentrate on encouraging optimal student engagement. Colleagues, we decided to give this aspect a special attention because of the mandate we are given by the institution through the curriculum statement to nurture the relationship between students and their lecturers as learning and teaching role players. Because learning and teaching is a deliberate encounter and relationships require space and time to strengthen. So colleagues would like to learn as much as we can from one another, ways and means of nurturing the relationships within the new online space and COVID-19 time. It was humbling to hear both Cheryl and Ms. D speaking about creating relationships with their students, as we all know that teacher-student relationship has a potential to make a student, especially in the period of uncertainties and anxieties. We hope to see you next week to learn more from other colleagues. From my side, goodbye, enjoy your long weekend, and stay safe.
The last word from the DVC, Professor Foxcroft. Before we go and enjoy our long weekend, we would like to hear from you, and it would be very good if you can do closure for this session.
Thanks very much, Noluthando, and I'm hoping that everybody is going to make use of the long weekend to get a little bit of rest. I know I can feel my body and my brain are frazzled at the moment, and I'm sure all of yours are as well. It's been a privilege again to be part of this session today, and I have a few thoughts. The one is both our presenters today have won Teaching Excellence Awards at our university, and I know that when we sit on the panels to choose the award winners, we always have lots of deliberations and are we picking the right person, etc. But I think we've had great examples today of excellent teachers who are now living out this excellence in another space in terms of the online space. So thank you very much to Cheryl and Dee for the way that you continue with your excellent work on the teaching and learning side of things. The other thing that a lot of others have picked up on is when we started this journey of online teaching, we used the term flexible pedagogy. And I've now, if you notice, when I start writing and I presented to our Exco of Council this week, I've actually called it flexible human-centered pedagogy. If you remember when we started the year, we set a vision for ourselves in this portfolio to provide innovative, human-centered, Africa-purposed learning experiences. And so I've now actually started saying, you know what, we're actually doing flexible, human-centered pedagogy. And today's two presentations were just typifying that human-centered part of it, for example. So thank you for that. You've given me examples I can use now, because when I speak to people outside of here, I try to use real life examples of what is happening. And in fact, I reacted quite strongly this week when a comment was made that we are practicing remote, what's it, emergency remote learning, and that, you know, we've really got to get to the proper online learning. And I reacted quite badly by saying, no, sorry, I don't actually like that term, so I personally haven't used it. But secondly, we have such great examples of proper online teaching and learning that's happening that we really can't say that all of this is just an emergency thing that we've done. And today, both Cheryl and Dee sparked that in me, because you are already thinking ahead to the next modules that you have to teach and different groups of students that you're going to be teaching, for example. And And so how you're taking your learnings from now, but also realizing that not you're going to have new classes, so you have to find new ways of doing things. And then just my last comment to close off is this issue of workload for students and staff is something we're going to have to address. One student was telling me yesterday, last Friday, he had 5 assessments. It was either assignments that had to be handed in, tests, etc., etc. Now, I mean, that just doesn't make sense. We have to find ways of changing it. And I'd like this group, as you go and have a nice long weekend now, to start giving some thinking if there are innovative ways that we could be putting our learning program, almost our timetable together. So, you know, for example, that if you're completing an online qualification, then they call it a carousel approach, where you can do one module at a time, for example, and then once you finish that one, you pick up the next one, and then the next one, for example. And I'm just quite intrigued by that concept. And I know when I was still teaching many years ago in our postgrad courses, we did this. We sometimes took a certain piece of work and we said, we're just concentrating on this for the next 2 weeks. Then as a lecturer, you know that's what you're doing. And then after that, you can move on as the lecturer and the students move on to another piece of work. So I'm just leaving that thought with you to go and explore, or come up also with some other suggestions for us as to, because normally you wouldn't choose as a student to do 5 online modules at the same time, which is what a lot of our students are doing. And as a lecturer, you wouldn't choose to teach 5 online modules at the same time, for example. So I'm just leaving that thought with you. Most of all, thank you very much to the 2 presenters. You've demonstrated flexible, human-centered pedagogy to the nth degree. Thank you so much for that. And please, everybody go and have a good long weekend. Thank you, Noluthando. You must just unmute yourself, Noluthando.
Oh, I'm busy talking to myself. Thank you, Prof. I was just going to say we will share the recording as soon as it is available. And thank you to you, Prof. And having you as part of this group makes it worthwhile and it keeps us going. We get motivated by your presence. Thank you and goodbye, everyone.
Bye-bye. Thank you.